don't we move into the next one, which is a great follow-up to this question. So this one, this person wrote, how should we budget as a couple? I was just curious how you manage your finances as a married couple and maybe why. Do you combine both salaries, take out the expenses and split the difference each month? Do you just let your partner send you money to cover all expenses? Do you have certain bills or expenses that you're each responsible for? I'm trying to figure out the best way that would work long term and also allow for independent accounts for each person to spend on their own hobbies. What should we do?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I think, Nick, you and I have different philosophies around this. First thing, when you're talking about budgeting as a couple, I think you need to make sure, are you already communicating about your finances? You know what I mean? That's like step one. So if you don't communicate with your partner at all about your finances, probably none of these things that they suggested are going to work just because you're not really on the same page with your money. So for example, my husband and I, we do keep things separate, but we have great communication, very transparent about, we know everything about each other's finances, right? So we like to keep two separate accounts. And then for us and our bills, like we don't have a joint account where we will keep those things. We do have a joint savings account where our savings goals go together. But as far as our bills that we pay, we do like a percentage based approach. So just until recently, our incomes were pretty similar. So we did do like the 50-50 split, and we would just pay our own things. Like at our old house before we moved, to Chicago, I would pay a lot of the like utilities, the HOA fee, things like that. And he would pay the mortgage out of his just because it would, essentially be down the middle for us there. But I know, and I think something that they mentioned here that's, I think, a really good idea is for couples to have like that joint account where they can both contribute for the bills and then pay the bills out of that account. And then you can have your own account for, anything, any discretionary spending, things that you want to do. But I think the biggest thing is communicating about it, what's fair for each of you. I don't think that if someone's making $300K and the other person is making $50K, that you would do an even split down the middle. There has to be a percentage-based approach, and there is a math equation on that. I'm not going to go into it here, but I do love the percentage-based approach, and I know a lot of people that use that, especially for like rent and things like that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like you said, you and I, like the way that we manage finances in our own relationships, like it looks totally different on the outside, but like what's underlying all of that is like the constant communication and then the shared values around what we think about money, like how we spend money, like our kind of beliefs around debt, things like that. And, that's what makes you able to have different methods for approaching your money as a couple. And then all those methods still have the same like chance of success as long as that underlying stuff is there. But like you said, like, for me and my wife, like I typically call it like 100% joint method. And so we have literally one checking account and then like two joint savings accounts. And then we each have our own like investing accounts, cause that stuff you can't really combine, but like both of our incomes gets deposited into like one savings account each month. And then we kind of figure out what the budget is together, right? So we'll sit down before the new month starts where we'll see, cool, does the budget look good? Do we need to make any tweaks? Like maybe she'll add stuff to it, maybe I'll add stuff to it. And then we just load that money into our account. And like really for us, like that's just been simplest for us. And to be fair, we dated for a really long time before we got married. And so we kind of like, kind of grew up together in a sense. And so like that just kind of made a lot of sense for us. But, what I usually recommend for people who aren't, who maybe don't want to go that route is usually like a 95% joint method, like you had said, where like you have that joint account for all the joint expenses, and then you just have your separate accounts for separate things that, if you want to go get your hair done or he wants to go do whatever, right? Like you kind of have your own individual money. And I think that's something that this person, it sounds like that's kind of what they're looking for, where a way that they can work together long term, but then still have that independence to do whatever they want. And I like what you said about bringing up the percentage based method, because even if you have that joint account, you can still figure out like, cool, what's a fair amount for each of us to contribute to that joint account? Does that cover all of our expenses? And then we're each left with whatever's the balance of our own incomes. And then we can kind of just spend it as we need to. But yeah, I don't think there's like one right way to do it at all. I think you two got to figure out what works best for you, Yeah.
And honestly, I feel like, my husband and I have just been doing it the same way for so long, but I really do love like the 95% joint method, like have that account where you can pay all of your bills out of that you're both putting money into, and then just have your own account where you can, spend how you want and don't have to like, keep track of it. I don't know if I could ever, and Nick, I'm surprised by this with you. I don't think I could ever, completely combine finances with my husband, because his spending, it's not sporadic, but like I would have a lot to track. You know what I mean? Like I like to track expenses, but I don't know if I want to track his expenses. So for me, I'm just like, I can definitely see us doing, maybe we will, maybe we'll transition to this. Like, you know, get a joint checking account that we can just like pay things out of. And then, you know, I'll start there and see how that goes with him.
Yeah, no, I think it works really well for us because like I'm the nerd when it comes to finances, but I'm also the one who is definitely more of like the spender out of us. She is by far the saver and like hates to spend money. And so like anytime she's like going to go do something, it's like a once a month occasion, you know, otherwise we're doing stuff together, we're buying groceries together. And so that stuff is all joint. But like, I think it works out because she probably doesn't have nearly as many expenses as I do. But you know, it's all written into the budget that she can spend as much as she wants. She just is a person who doesn't like to spend a whole lot of money. But I would imagine if she had, you know, significantly more expenses than me, there'd probably be like, it probably wouldn't be as fun. It probably wouldn't maybe work as well. But, yeah, you know, you kind of got to just try different things and see what works. But no, it works great for us, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, like we've touched on so many times and we'll continue to, you know, talk about, you have to communicate about your finances. That is the biggest thing here. I don't care if you have 3 accounts, you know, for each, whatever you want to do with them, you have to communicate about your finances and be on the same page as your partner. Like that is the number one thing there. Transparency, you know, you just have to know the ins and outs of your money, regardless if you have a shared account or if you keep everything separate. There has to be open communication about that or it's just not going to work. So.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, I don't know what this couple's situation is. In my mind, it sounds like this is maybe like a newly married couple. They're kind of trying to find a way to combine things that works well for both of them. Like, I think this is absolutely a conversation that should be had like before you get married and not to throw any shade to, it's good that these people are talking about it now, but like just money in general, like, are you two on the same page with money? Cause financial like arguments, that's like one of the highest causes of divorce. And like if you two aren't aligned with your money, even if everything else is great, like money pours into every other part of your life and it's going to constantly be like a thread that's getting pulled that like, man, this just like we're great relationship wise, but when it comes to money we just fight about it, you know? So these are the kinds of conversations you got to be having when you're going to decide to spend your life with someone, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because we know the divorce statistics and a lot of it breaks down to finances.
Yeah.
So yeah, sure. The information, opinions, and recommendations provided on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and do not constitute professional financial advice. Any financial decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are your responsibility. We strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor or other qualified professional before making any significant financial decisions. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that we are not liable for any financial outcomes.